Hi, my name's Amy Johnson, and I'm here to teach you how to have easy relationships. I'm a psychologist and a life coach, and I've taught a couple other classes here for Entheos, and I'm really excited about this one on relationships for a few reasons. One, I just want to put right out there that I'm sure that you've read a million books about relationships, a million blogs, you've probably seen 50 classes on how to have easy relationships. And I don't know that what I'm going to share with you is going to be completely groundbreaking and really like instantly transform your life. But I do know that these are things that, when I came across them and when I've shared them with my clients and other people, they really have been sort of like the small shifts that make a huge difference. So I really am passionate about this material because I think it's a little bit different. This isn't going to be me, these 10 big ideas I'll share with you. It's not my advice because my advice might work for me, but what good is it for you? It's more like universal wisdom. This is like, what we know about how the human experience is created and how we think and how we experience connection with other people and kind of what that means for you, in your everyday relationships. And so I hope that you kind of can listen to this with an open mind, and just kind of possibly, hopefully, hear something new in what we're going to talk about. So, easy relationships, sometimes people think that's a joke. And I know there's like all these cliches about relationships are hard and they're hard work and all of that. And that certainly is the case. That definitely is the experience of most people, many people at least, that relationships are hard and they're a struggle. And I'm sure they sometimes are for everyone, as anything in life is. But I don't think relationships have to be hard. What we really want to look at is not, that it's wrong if you experience them as hard, because it's not right or wrong. It's just kind of looking at, wait a minute, how am I possibly making this a little harder than it needs to be? Like, where can this be easy? And when we just look at what is natural and what is, innate within us and what's right there, then we start looking in the direction of how things can be sort of easier than we're making them, and they tend to show up as much easier. So I'll launch into the 10 big ideas now. The very first one is that connection is our natural state. So I just think this is so fascinating. When you look at babies, they kind of easily connect with everyone. I mean, you really have to be like a major sociopath to have a baby kind of look at you and flinch. Babies, they look people right in the eyes as soon as they're able to. They warm up to people. They have this instant, effortless sort of connection. And that really is our nature. We all have that within us to connect with other people that easily and naturally. And the only thing that really gets in our way as we grow up and kind of go through life is that we have a lot of thinking. We have fears, we have insecurities, we get lost in our head. And so when I meet my new neighbor and I'm lost in my head thinking, are they going to like me? Is their house better than mine? I hope my kids, aren't brats with their kids or whatever I'm thinking. The connection's not there. When I show up with my new neighbor and I'm just there, and there's none of that chatter in my head, and we're just there as two people together, there's connection. And that's not to say, now this isn't a prescription, so I'm not saying, stop thinking all the time or don't worry about all these petty things. It's just a great thing to know that connection is our nature. And when you know that, you can rest in it a little bit because you know that, okay, this is what I'm designed to do. It's there, connection's there underneath all the thought. The second big idea is if it's not love, it's temporary. This is sort of along the same lines that in a lot of spiritual texts that a lot of people have studied, they kind of talk about there being two things like love and fear. And fear is just thought. We have fear, we have insecurities, we have all these momentary, temporary things, experiences that we experience in life that aren't love and that kind of take us away from love and connection. And so I love that sort of perspective on it, just to think, okay, if I'm feeling anything that doesn't feel like love and connection, I'm just being human. I'm just stuck in my ego or in my head in that moment. And no worries, because it passes. Our thinking is temporary. All of that's temporary. The only time it's an issue is if we think it's a big deal. If we say, oh no, why don't I love him as much as I did yesterday? Or why is she on my nerves so bad today? Or we make it a big deal. If you don't make it a big deal, it's just temporary and it does go away. The third big idea is, as I mentioned in the beginning, it doesn't have to be hard. So we certainly create log jams and we make things very difficult. We get in our own way. And the way we do that, of course, based on what I just said in the first two big ideas, is that we overthink things. We analyze and we think so much. And it's human and natural to do that. Of course we're going to do it at times. It's just really helpful, I think, to see that we do that and to know that we're doing that. Because when you find yourself in this big jam about why your relationship seems like it's changed or why everything suddenly got so difficult and all of that, it's really helpful to be able to know, wait a minute, maybe I'm just thinking a lot. Maybe if I step back from my thinking rather than think more, it's going to sort of clear up, because it is our nature that we feel connection and things clear up, So that kind of constant search to like fix it and make everything better is kind of making it harder than it has to be. Sometimes we can just step back and let things sort of work themselves out. Fourth big idea is one that I hear all the time with people I work with, and it's that keeping score is a relationship killer. So I'm certainly guilty of this myself at times, and especially in the past, and I hear this all the time, the constant sort of, well, I did this for him, like, well, what am I getting out of it? I give so much, like, where's my good stuff, and that constant sort of keeping score on things. And although it's very, again, there's no judgment on any of this, it's very human, it's very natural, it's definitely a rut people fall into. It's really helpful to see that it is just insecure thinking. When we get insecure, as every human on earth does, and especially in relationships, we start to look out for ourselves. We get defensive and we build walls and we start saying, well, am I being taken care of? Are they giving me enough? And we completely lose sight of that natural connection and what we're offering and what we're giving. We're so busy keeping score that we stop giving to them, and so just look out for that. Like, it's, you could speak hours and hours just on that topic alone, but I would say just kind of look out for it. If you notice yourself being a scorekeeper or always keeping score, just notice, yeah, I'm not feeling so secure in this right now. And that's human, it's okay. But the keeping score isn't really going to fix things. It usually makes things much worse. Another thing that I learned from a teacher of mine is this compassion rather than resentment. So this is big idea number 5. He said that the only difference between feeling compassion for someone versus feeling resentment toward them is whether you're thinking about yourself or whether you're thinking about them. So, for example, my husband goes on a business trip, and let's say he doesn't call me until like midway through the second day. Now, I could get very resentful. And I could say, what's wrong with him? Doesn't he just left me at home, to take care of everything, and now he doesn't even call to check in, and all of that. And when I'm feeling that resentment, I'm thinking about myself. I'm keeping score in a sense. I'm thinking, why am I not getting my call? Doesn't he care about me? It's all about me. And again, that's what people do. It's okay if you find yourself in that situation. But it's really fascinating to see that the other side of that is compassion. And we feel compassion naturally when we think about them. So I might think, I hope he had a good flight. He's probably exhausted. I hope, he had to wake up and work the next day. And, what is that like for him? Or even if it's not like that, even if it's like he's just being a jerk and not calling, if I get into him and think, well, what must he be going through that he just hasn't called me, or whatever it is, it suddenly takes the resentment away and kind of replaces it with a little bit of compassion. So it's just a really simple thing of kind of looking at, am I thinking all about myself and keeping score here, or am I actually thinking about the other person a little bit? Big idea number 6 is one that's very near and dear to my heart. So communicating every problem is a terrible idea. Our popular psychology, our society, just everything we know about kind of how therapy and psychology and self-help kind of work has sort of told us along the way and kind of brainwashed us in a sense that we need to talk about everything. If you have a problem, the only way it's going to get fixed is if you step in and solve it. You talk about it and you work through it. And think about how many moments of your life in a relationship you feel like something isn't quite right. Now, if every single one of those you then talked about, holy crap, I mean, how unfun of a relationship would that be? It would be super serious. All you'd ever do is talk about your problems. And, remember kind of what we said early on, how our nature is that we're pretty calm, pretty, we experience peace of mind, we experience connection. That's our nature. So to think that we have to like go in and fix every little thing that's bothering us, it really goes against that nature. Like if your nature is calm and you're okay and connected, and you experience something that's not that, the hardest thing you have to do is maybe just step back and let that experience pass. So, our thinking brings us all of these problems. And when we jump into that thinking and we're like, oh yeah, this is true, I really do have a problem here, we have to discuss it, then you end up having a lot of serious discussions that aren't very fun. When you, on the other hand, experience that and think, oh, there's a problem, I'm not happy right now, this isn't the best day with this person, whatever. But there's a part of you that knows that's just your thinking. That's like, yeah, well, I'm kind of in a bad mood, or I had a hard day at work, or what, you don't even have to justify it. I mean, you just think, okay, that's how I feel right now. And you kind of just give it a minute. What you'll often find is you wake up the next day feeling very different. So, so often what looks like a problem to me, I later see was just a problem of my own state of mind. I was in a bad state of mind, so everything he does looks annoying. When I'm in a different state of mind, he does the exact same things and they're cute. So what does that tell you? Like there's nothing to discuss, there's nothing to do. There's no problem. You kind of let your own state of mind bounce back to a clearer place, and suddenly everything looks very different. So, that's a big one in kind of making things easier in a sense, because a lot of like this really hard relationship stuff that we talk about, when relationships seem hard, it's kind of people believing that they need to kind of work on all their problems or fix all their problems, or, like this huge thing that they have to kind of work through. And I would just, really love to see people just try to kind of just try it as an experiment. You don't have to completely stop talking about things, but just, in the spirit of science, of experimenting with your relationship, just try to kind of see if you take a step back and sleep on it or whatever, if your thinking doesn't kind of just change and it doesn't look different for you at some point. Maybe it won't. This is not to say don't ever talk about problems. So certainly there are things that, it's really beneficial to talk about and work through. It's just to say that like maybe the path of least resistance, the easy way, is to see if you bounce out of your bad mood first. And if you do and things look different, and then there's no problem, If they don't, if they still look like a problem time after time, then absolutely go in and talk if that's what occurs to you to do. So big idea number 7 is to give what you want to get. So we touched on this a little bit in the keeping score big idea. But it's so common, I think, for us to sort of come to relationships, especially from a very naturally somewhat insecure place. I mean, I don't know when I say that, that's not anything bad about anyone. I don't know any humans on earth who are like perfectly secure all the time, especially when it comes to romantic relationships. I mean, they bring up our insecurities, and that's just what it means to be a human being. So when we feel insecure, it's just natural to kind of like hunker down, build some walls, and like get as much as we can. Love and affection and connection and all of that stuff, like just gimme. And we kind of stop giving so much. And it doesn't really work. So you want to get more, and you, in the process of wanting to get more, you stop giving so much. Well, the other person's going to stop giving right back, and you're going to end up sort of stuck. So I think it's so wonderful and such a great kind of spiritual exercise as well to notice what you would love to have, and rather than trying to get it, give it. If it's attention, if it's affection, if it's just understanding, whatever it is, just give it in your own way. And again, it's not like, you might want affection in one way and your partner might want it in a different way. It doesn't have to be, we're not talking about like literally exactly giving what you want to get. But if what you want is more closeness, be closer, give more closeness and see how that works out for you. Big idea number 8 is another biggie. Again, kind of comes out of the whole therapy culture. It's don't revisit the past. So again, that's stated a little firmly, and I definitely don't mean don't ever revisit the past. And certainly, if you have a lot of happy memories, revisit the past by all means. But when you're discussing things and working things out, and in the course of all of that kind of stuff, it's so helpful to just know that we can kind of leave the past where it is. We don't, you can do what you want with the past. You can go into it if you want to. But I want people to really know that we don't have to. You don't have to go work out like your issues with your parents and all of this garbage before you come into a relationship. It's absolutely possible and preferable, I think, easier for sure, to just be in relationship with the person you're with and just be with them. And yes, things from the past are going to come up, but you have an open mind about that. And when you kind of see, okay, well, maybe, his mom issues are coming up or my dad issues are coming up or whatever, you just kind of see that as his mom issues or my dad issues. It's not necessarily something that you have to go take to a therapist and sit there and talk about for hours. It's not something you have to get to the bottom of, because what it is just thought. It's coming to you in the moment, but it's just a memory. It's not real anymore. It's just a memory. And so to the extent that we're entertaining memories that are painful, we're going to feel that pain, and those memories, those things are going to kind of get in our way. But remember, our thinking is very fluid, and it's always kind of changing and evolving. And so we can have moments where we're really very much in the past and making things really difficult, and we can wake up the next day and that can be different. It's not necessarily something that we need to go into the past to try to kind of cure the present or the future from the past, because I don't really think it works that way. So again, good memories, positive things from the past, definitely go there, because that's kind of what people tend to lose. You think about in the early days of any kind of romantic relationship, for example, and just how the closeness that you felt and just the way that you felt. And then time goes on and you get a little bit removed from some of those feelings. Now, if you want to revive your relationship, by all means, go back to that. Try to remember what you saw in that person or the thoughts that you had about that person in those first few months or that first year. And that's a great thing to do. But when it comes to problems, just know that the solution to anything that you're dealing with in this moment isn't done and over with. It's not in the past. Big idea number 9 is that unkind acts are acts of fear and insecurity. So this really goes for any kind of relationships. And I think this is such a valuable thing to see. It's so easy to kind of have someone do something to us that feels sort of wrong or mean. And we very instinctively, very naturally kind of call them a mean person, or we assume, all these horrible things about them. And I think, and so naturally when we do that, we kind of distance ourselves, or we build walls, or we just kind of cut them out, and relationships end or change, because of things like that all the time. I think it's so helpful to see that maybe what people do that comes across as mean or unkind in any way isn't that it's not because they're a mean person or that they're kind of evil. It's that they're hurting and they're insecure, because every single thing that we do that comes across as unkind or that is unloving in any way is just our own fear and insecurity at work. And, even when it's intentional, so I say that to people and they'll say, no, well, this person, they meant to do it. Like, my ex meant to slash my tires or something. Like, well, yeah, they didn't slash your tires on accident. They meant to slash your tires. I'll give you that. But what made slashing your tires look like a good idea to them in the moment? Their own hurt. And so, I'm absolutely not condoning being with someone. I'm not saying, get over it and be with someone who slashed your tires. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm only saying, see sort of the bigger picture in it. Like, they're living in their own thinking, and their own thinking is creating a lot of pain for them. And what naturally occurred to them in the midst of all that pain was to go slash your tires. Was it a horrible decision? Yes. Was it unkind? Yes. But from that state of mind that they were in, from where they were in that moment, that's what occurred to them to do, so that's what they did. And so it's it's less about sort of blaming and judging. It's just kind of having a little bit of understanding that we all do things that we are not proud of, that are not kind things. And from your own experience that when you do things that are unkind and that you kind of regret or wish you hadn't done, that it doesn't mean you're a monster. It just means that you in some way were either really insecure or really hurting, and you acted from that place. So it's more about just having some understanding about those things than it is about condoning them or anything like that. Big idea number 10 is really kind of the granddaddy of all of them, and it sort of ties everything together. So it's always about anything in relationships. It's always about the feeling that exists between two people. Now, this sounds kind of obvious, but it's so much deeper and kind of more important, I think, than it sounds at first blush, because it's so natural to just look at relationships and just be able to list off all of these problems or list off, all of the things that are less than the way we want them to be. And what tends to be true is that, sometimes over the course of relationships, problems arise and people change, and certainly that happens. But again, if you think back to like how you felt about your partner when you first met them, when you were first with them, and not just romantic relationships, friendships, everything, they tend to start off pretty good. And people are drawn together because they're not really caught up in their heads cataloging faults or keeping score or doing any of this stuff yet, trying to fix problems. They're just really in the moment with that person. And so these feelings are there and they grow and everyone enjoys them and everyone's happy and in love and life is good. And over time, we start thinking, and that those feelings are still there. That closeness is there. A lot of times it's still there. It's just getting kind of covered up by so much of our own thinking about things. I mean, I can remember this like in my own relationship. All of a sudden, it was like, okay, the party's over. Now I'm supposed to be thinking about whether this is someone I want to live my life with. Or now I'm supposed to be thinking about, is this a deal breaker? And like all that stuff. And it was like almost like society, like it was almost felt like it was irresponsible to not start thinking about the relationship. Like, okay, you've had fun, now it's time to get serious, and getting serious meant start thinking about things. And what do we think that's going to do? You're in love and having fun and just kind of going through life, and now suddenly you're supposed to start thinking really hard about the relationship. Of course that's going to change things, and of course that's going to bring things up. And again, I'm not advocating like denial or being stupid or just like not thinking things through or anything like that. It's just to kind of see that, all of these things that we get really caught up in our heads thinking about the relationship, a lot of them are really fluid. They're sort of like, it looks like a big problem, but then the next day it doesn't look like such a big problem, or it's kind of an issue here, but then when you're in a good mood, it's not an issue. And you kind of have to ask, like, if it really changes that much and it kind of comes in and out, is it something I should be devoting a lot of thought to? Because when I devote a lot of thought to it, my feelings seem to go away. Like I'm not in that nice feeling with that person. I'm in my head thinking about our problems, And when I don't devote a lot of thought to it, sure, it comes and goes. I have my good days and our bad days, together. But it's always sort of kind of moving and changing. And it isn't necessarily something that, it's something that really grows the more we think about it. It tends to be the case with a lot of our problems. So there's so much to say and like so much in just like being in the one moment with a person and just feeling like that deep feeling that's there and knowing that all of the stuff that life is going to throw at you is going to happen, but we don't have to get taken down by it all. Like we can kind of weather that storm and like have those things thrown at us and, have your feelings kind of change a little bit and all of that stuff. But know that it's always possible to kind of go back to that feeling. And And when you can't go back to that feeling, a lot of times it just means you're thinking a whole lot. Like you just have a lot on your mind, you know. But in any kind of relationship, there are moments of that deeper feeling when both parties are not just kind of caught up in their heads and things are really good. So no matter what the state of your relationship is, if you're working on things or it's just already good and easy going, you know, just notice, look for that feeling, because you'll see it, you'll find it, you know, even when things are bad. You'll have just a moment when you're not fighting, when you look over and like they don't look that bad. It's like, all right, maybe there's a feeling there. And if you feel it even for a second, go with it, because that's some truth. That means your mind is settled down and you're feeling that natural connection with that person. Now, that doesn't mean you stay with them. It doesn't mean you marry them. It doesn't mean you do any of that stuff. I don't know what's going to happen. It just means that in that feeling, you can make a decision. Like you'll know, you'll have some clarity in that feeling instead of kind of being lost in your head. So hopefully this gives, you know, some good tips for having easier relationships. It kind of puts things in a slightly different perspective than maybe you've heard them in before. Because again, who knows what's going to happen? I could never talk to a couple and say you're going to break up or you should stay together or anything. That's not for me to decide, and who the heck knows, you know. But if you are kind of in the moment and the feeling with your partner, and you're able to just kind of be in that place with them, and, you know, not be lost in your head, notice your own insecurities, all of these kind of things, you're going to get your own clarity, and your relationship's going to kind of go in one direction or another, and it's going to kind of work out for you. So I hope this is helpful. Check out my other classes on Entheos, and hope to see you in the future.